word gets out, then a contract literally isn't worth the paper that it's written.
What can we do?
I think we have to do what we keep doing, which is talk about the Constitution, because ultimately common sense has to prevail, even though Barack Obama has huge majorities in both houses of Congress. There are Republicans who go along with this nonsense. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue.
It's just a distraction. It's about getting the eye off what happened here. That's what it is.
Yesterday, you and I talked about the latest threat to human freedom, which is a proposal by the Obama administration asking the Congress to give the President and the Secretary of the Treasury the power to go in and look at the books of any corporation, not just one that's publicly traded, not just one that has received financial assistance from the government, but anyone. Could be owned by your family, could be owned by your parents, it could be owned by anybody. They want to be able to go in, look at the books, hire, fire, modify contracts if they hate or fear what the corporation is doing. That is so clearly against the Constitution, and yet they will push for it.
What they're saying is, if the company is big enough and its troubles are large enough to bring down, somebody answer the freaking phone. Don't call in the middle of a program. If a company is big enough that it fails, it brings down the country, they can go in and seize it. Where do they get this power from? It does not come from the Constitution. The Constitution specifically says they can't do that.
Did you happen to see Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann interrogating Tim Geithner? She asked him 4 times, where in the Constitution do you have this power? Congress wrote the law. No, where in the Constitution? Well, it's a statute somewhere. Where in the Constitution do you have this power? He couldn't answer the question.
Because there is no power.
Because there is no such power. Because he probably never read the document on which he took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend.
Do you think that they really are considering doing this, or is this just something to talk about for the moment?
Congressman Shadegg, who defends the free market, told me on Brian and the Judge, our radio show this morning, that Nancy Pelosi said no debate and no committee hearings. There's just going to be a vote on this and it will pass. Hopefully that will not happen in the Senate. But this will be the second time in a week that the House of Representatives has done something so over the top, so Soviet central planning-like, without any debate, and it will get away with it.
And it's doing it to cover itself from public ridicule and public scorn and to try to save their individual jobs. That's why they're doing it.
It's the only reason that anybody in Congress does anything is so that they can stay there.
And it's neither Republican nor Democrat. It's all of them. They're trying to get our eyes off the prize. Why isn't there a groundswell? And I hear a lot of people talking about this, especially when I go home to Mississippi. I hear a lot of people talking about term limits and how we can solve this problem by putting term limits in place. But I guess they'll never let us do that either. I guess they'll eventually just put us all in cages.
The mechanics for term limits are Congress would have to vote for it, and they're not going to vote to limit their own power.
We have no power as the people.
We have no power as the people as long as we keep sending the same culprits back. I appreciate your time so much. I know you got a show in 45 minutes. Anything interesting at 3 o'clock?
No, not really.
Any more violations of the Constitution that we found?
I'm confident there will be more violations, and when there are, we'll bring you on to talk about them.
Thank you so much. And by the way, thank you for using that email last night. When I emailed you, I thought you were home. I didn't realize you were on air.
I was trying to get something from the judge last night to use during the broadcast of the president's address, and he emailed me back, as he always does, but of course I was off the air by then.
All right. I heard you said some nice things. Thank you very much,
Thank
Shep.
you, Judge.
Always a pleasure.
Right on.
Peter Schiff is joining us now from Euro Pacific Capital. Do we have somebody on the phone, or do I get to interrogate Peter Schiff alone? Something I've wanted to do for a long time. Peter's, of course, one of our Wednesday regulars. Peter has achieved, in my view, the status of national hero. In the view of some economists, a status of notoriety, because he had the foresight to predict what would happen to the economy on the basis of looking at historical models and understanding how the Austrian School of Economics works. Let me ask you some basic questions. If I'm a $100,000 a year wage earner and my job is pretty secure, and I have a mortgage, a car, and a couple kids in college, and my wife earns a little bit of money on the side, and we have some savings, what should we do with it, and how should we plan?
Well, the first thing you want to do is get your savings out of dollars, because there's no safety in dollars. I mean, it's the dollar that's being debased.
What do you mean when you say that there's no safety in dollars? Let's say I have $25,000 in savings in a bank where I think it's insured up to $250,000. What do I have to worry about?
Well, the nominal value is insured. That's the problem. The real value is not. And because the government's going to have to print so many dollars to make good on all these commitments, when you go and withdraw your money from the bank, you won't be able to buy very much. You know, all this government, the new budget is something like, what, $3.5 trillion or $3.7 trillion with almost a $2 trillion deficit. How is that deficit being financed? Where's the government getting the money? There's no free lunch here. And if the government can't borrow that money from the Chinese and the Japanese, Ben Bernanke is going to roll it off the printing presses, which means the value of all the money we have is debased. And even if we can con the Chinese into loaning us the money for now, eventually they're going to want to get paid back. And the only way we can do that without taxing everybody to death is by running off more money from the printing press.
All right, the arguments that you're making, which make perfectly clear sense to me, because you and I have, in college and throughout our professional lives, read many of the same materials, are generally referred to as the Austrian School of Economics. Who is that and what does it mean?
Well, I mean, Austrian economics, I mean, that is economics. Everything else is nonsense. It's almost like saying, Chinese physics. I mean, physics is physics and economics is economics. All the rest of this is nonsense. Keynesianism isn't economics. It's unfortunately a lot of people believe in it, but that's why the country is on this path. But, unfortunately, when the government takes policies, monetary policy that's so destructive to savings, the fact that I have to tell my clients or people listening to this show not to save their money in dollars, but to take it out of dollars, that's destructive to our economy because we can't grow unless we save. But no one's going to save if the government is destroying the value of our money.
If I put $25,000 in the bank, even with an interest the bank pays me, when I go to take it out, it's worth less than $25,000. Why?
Because it'll buy less, because prices have to rise. When the government prints more money and spends it into circulation, prices have to respond by rising. Otherwise, you just can't print money and create purchasing power. All you're doing is redistributing the purchasing power. So the government is redistributing purchasing power away from your hypothetical guy with 25 grand to whoever gets that government check.
Is there any reason why the government would want inflation?
Well, of course, I mean, there's no secret that the government is the world's biggest debtor.
Right.
And so inflation always transfers wealth from debtors to creditors. So in the example of your hypothetical investor, to the extent that he has $25,000, he's a creditor. That money is savings. And by wiping out the value of the dollar, the government transfers wealth from that creditor to itself.
All right. What should I do with my savings? What should I do to preserve my assets? Let's say in my hypothetical, I own a house, maybe worth $250,000. Maybe I have $100,000 in equity into it. The rest is a mortgage payment. I'm making the mortgage payments. I have a steady job. My kids are going to college. My wife does a little part-time work. We've got $25,000 in cash in the bank.
Yeah.
What do we do?
I don't know. First of all, you have a steady job now. It might not be so steady in a few months as the economy continues to worsen.
Okay.
I don't know where the person lives. I mean, I still think real estate prices are going to fall. It might make sense to try to put the house on the market if you can sell it and rent something, if you can get a better deal. If you can't do that, my advice would be to try to refinance into the cheapest money I can get because they're really giving away money right now at the banks. So rates are artificially low.
So if I came to you and said, here's my passbook for $25,000, what would you tell me to do with it?
Well, you definitely want to do something with that. I wouldn't pay down your mortgage. I think I'd rather acquire something outside the United States. I'd rather own foreign stocks that pay dividends or buy some silver coins that you can keep to have real value.
What would I do with the silver coins? Would the dealer keep them and I would get evidence of their existence, or would I put them in a safe?
I mean, I would, like, you can bury it in your yard somewhere, hide it in your house. I mean, we sell a lot of precious metals at my company, Euro Pacific Capital. I do it through the Perth Mint program in Australia. So you can actually buy gold and silver and have it stored for free in a mint owned by the government of Western Australia. So they'll keep it for you in Australia, and that way it's at least outside the United States in case we ever try to confiscate it.
We are now joined by our good friend and colleague Lew Rockwell from the Von Mises Institute. Lew, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Judge, great to be with you.
Thank you. And, of course, Peter Schiff is with us as well. If dollars actually represented a claim on a commodity, like, say, let's dollars were still backed by gold, would we have the problems today that we have?
No, we wouldn't. I mean, our problems are entirely caused in this area by an increase in the money supply, what the dictionary definition of inflation. That is, the Federal Reserve is engaging in exactly what criminals engage in. That is, they're counterfeiting. They're producing out of thin air new dollars by the trillions. I mean, an unbelievable mountain of new dollars. And they're risking the Zimbabweification or the Weimarification of the American Republic. I mean, these are, as all the great economists back in the School of Salamanca and St. Bernardine of Siena and Bishop Nicholas Oresme from the 14th century have held, This is an immoral act. It's an act of theft for the government to artificially increase the money supply. It has, of course, horrific economic